Still the same table, still all the same mess that was here yesterday. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm being a bad example, but what are you gonna do when that's close to home, you know? It's just the way it is. My table's a mess, sorry. What I'm doing, see if I can demonstrate for you here. Even this will work, this is fine. What it is when you slide your hand across this, I did pretty well in most of the areas, not a lot of stuff to worry about, but I definitely do have, I don't think this is a high spot so much as there's a little dip there. There's a little low spot where there's some material missing, and I've got to sand that flat. Now, these door panels are getting upholstered because, as you can see, they don't look that great. Even the original finish, the texture is worn off here, paint's worn off here, and obviously it has been cracking and whatnot. So this, you can see here too where there's a crack. Nowhere really for this to catch. That's fine. These are nice and flush. This is nice and flush. I got that high spot here, and I'm working out some ugly spots here too. This is nice and smooth, but I've got a high spot here. So, just so you know, of course you wouldn't do this if you were trying to preserve this door, but I'm just trying to get it flat so that I can upholster over it without having steps and whatnot that are going to show in there. And when you're trying to get rid of a step, this is very similar to doing body work. When you're trying to get rid of a step, you can see where the edge is. If I keep sanding until, I'll show you, I'll keep sanding and we'll see if I can get that to just be one surface. And then because of the fact, like I said, this is a dip, there's a low spot there that even when I sand more, there's still going to be a low spot that's going to be visible or possibly visible through my upholstering. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this spot with a bit of Bondo once I get this level. Or close to level anyway. Now mind you, I'm not using a ton of pressure here. I'm kind of just letting the sandpaper do the work and reveal to me where the edges of this are, because that's how you're going to find how to get level. If I start grinding in there and taking out a bunch of material, I don't know where level is anymore. So you're really not putting much pressure on this. I'm trying to let the edges reveal themselves. So now I have a clearly defined low spot that I'm going to go in and fill. I don't have a pencil out here. You know, I suppose it's not going to hurt anything since I'm just going to upholster over this anyway. Basically what I'm looking at, if I leave this as is, which I'll probably sand a little bit more than that, but basically my fill area, I try and outline them. I usually do this with pencil, but I guess it's not going to hurt anything in this case. That's the area where I'm going to swipe. And I'll show you why that's useful when I get to the actual spreading of the Bondo. The reason I just cut this in half is because there's kind of a lip here that goes down to a straight edge. And I don't like to fight contours. If there's contours in there, I like to use them as a guide. So what I've got, by cutting this, I develop a fairly straight edge. And then I use a popsicle stick or a tongue depressor or even a paint stick just to keep that level so I'm getting even pressure across. Because what I want to do, I want the end result to be flat. But I also want to keep that line defined if I can. Because a line that's not defined, or a line that's wonky, that's the kind of thing to where you do your fill and you fix things up and suddenly you end up with a weird pull in your fabric that just that's getting down to it. The edges here are a little crisp. I'm going to round those off in a minute, but I'm going to continue working on this little bugger there. That's pretty good, but there's a hang up area there, but I'm not getting rid of that. I'm going to use that to help me define level when I do the spread with my bottle. Like I said, not much pressure. Just letting the edges define themselves so you can see where your low spots are. Because the low spots, that's where your filler's going to be. Let me get a moist towel. This towel is only slightly moistened with just water, and the reason I do that is just it helps to reveal the work I've done here. It helps to get those get the dirt and debris out of these nooks and crannies so I can truly see where my low spots are. Now the low spots, all of this gray area, that's where I've sanded. And all of these blue spots, meaning here, and it gets a little funky right here. I may sand at that a bit more, but think I will sand at that a bit more, but I'm not going to do that right now. As long as we're just going through basically what the steps are, I'm going to move on to next steps so you guys get an idea of what that looks like. Or at least what that looks like the way I do it. These, I tend to use any, semi-stiff cardboard that's small from different boxes. I think this was the box for a tachometer that I used to have, and I just saved it because I do like having this thickness of board around, and I'll all right, so this is Bondo, just regular Bondo body filler. You can see I didn't go out and buy a gallon can for this. It's a little ridiculous for the size of the repair we got going on. I used some of this for, this is really all you're going to need for this sort of thing. Probably far more than you're going to need. And I'm showing you this because, I don't know, I work around a lot of people who mix a lot of Bondo for a lot of things. And I just wanted to film this portion so that you can understand how I mix, the methods I use, and the amount of hardener I use, because a lot of people, they'll look at this and they'll look at the color of it and tell you that's too hot. They're right to some degree. I've mixed it slightly hot. I've never had a problem, at least at this stage, with this kind of color. I've never had a problem with this showing up as, or becoming overly brittle or flaking off or any of that. And the reason I do this, I just wanted to demonstrate so it can begin to make a little bit of sense for you. These are small, tiny areas. And the idea with this, with spreading this Bondo, is you want to be able to create a small high spot along the entire thing, because if you know where your edges are, you can go ahead and get this into that whole area and do so relatively flat. And that's exactly what I want. This is part of the reason why I mix it slightly hot. You see that it's already beginning to gel and harden up. This is not such a major thing on these small areas, But especially when you have a larger area that you're trying to do this over, I like to be able to just go in and razor off some high spots. What's the advantage of razoring off the high spots? Well, quite frankly, the reason I do it is because I like to begin sanding before this has fully cured. It allows me to really use almost no force and just let the sandpaper kind of feather off those edges. And when you begin sanding, while these things are still not cured, you're going to gum up your sandpaper. So I like to remove as much as I can. See that? That a little bit of sanding already gummed up my sandpaper some. And that's typical when you do it this way. All I'm doing here is I'm dragging through this before this has fully cured, because during this time makes it very easy to take down those high spots. I'll do my finish sanding in a minute once these high spots are gone. What I'm hoping that you're able to see there, still got a bit of material here. When you're doing it this way, there's definitely a point at which you need to stop. Because if you recall what I was saying with the Bondo spreading, you're wanting to create a little bit of a high spot. I want to let those stay high until I'm ready to sand. So you can see I didn't take off all the material there, but I did take off some because I want my finish sanding to be on something that's kind of just ready for finish sanding. I'm going to let this continue hardening up for a little bit. Reason for that, when it's soft like this, if I go digging at it, there's a chance in these hairline little cracks, this little crack here that has now been filled with that, if I keep sanding, there's a chance I'm going to dig that out of there, and that goes against what we're trying to do here. I'm just trying to knock down high spots as much as I can so that my finish sanding is easy to get flat. Alright, so this has hardened up a bit, and I've already begun sanding a little. I'm sorry, I should have caught that for you, but anyway, yeah, it's hardened up some, and as I said, once it's hardened up, that's when I'll come in and start doing my kind of pretty close to finished sanding. Oops. Now this that I'm doing here, if I was doing this on a car exterior, for instance, I would go ahead, step this down, and begin doing some finer sanding to remove these sand marks and whatnot. But this, I am really just trying to get this flat-ish and level-ish so that your eye doesn't go to it. This is all getting covered with upholstery material. So, I mean, as it is, I have very little area where I can even feel any dips in the surface or anything. My gloves catch on nothing, and that's what I want. And that's probably as far as I'll take this, because I think that's all that's necessary in this instance. That's okay. And again, this is just a very slightly damp cloth because I want to go over it a couple times, give a chance for any stray particles to stick to this so I can pull them away. And that's about all we need. I was trying to think of a way I can demonstrate to you how flat this actually is. Hopefully you can see this. When I push down and drag this across, I mean, there's a curve that's starting here. That's how come you see that side will come up. But when you get down on it, it's just about as flat as it needs to be. Same thing here. It's flat. Alright, I also figured, what the heck, while I'm at it, I'll just show you this a little bit. These are the pieces that I left there when I did this process yesterday, and I just wanted to show you the reason I left those. I was talking about using a scissors and DA to knock those down. They are somewhat rigid. They're a little bit flexible, but they're not flexible because of the stuff not being cured or anything. Just flexible because, quite frankly, I only did 2 layers of this, and in some of these areas that are on the edges, there is only 1 layer. So naturally, that's going to flex. I may as well tell you, part of the reason why you can use a DA to do this more quickly, but as you can see, even with just the sandpaper I was using, these straggly bits come away quite easily. I was going to do this piece with the DA, but as long as I'm here doing it by hand, I'll just show you. I mean, it can be done by hand. Quite neatly and quite easily, especially when it's only, like I said, 1 to 2 layers in these areas. And then something else I do, because as I said, I'm going to be upholstering this, so I'm going to be handling this all over the place. I like to come through and give this, I call this just giving it a safety sand, because fiberglass is fine, nasty stuff. I don't want to be poking my fingers and cutting myself when I'm trying to handle this stuff, so round off the edges. And take down any of those areas where you've got little pointy, prickly bits that just wind up in your hands later on. Any little prickly, stickly bits. Prickly, stickly? Sounds like a nursery rhyme. And sorry, not to make this video longer than it needs to be, but I just wanted to show you that. Little consideration now. It's gonna save your fingers later. There you go. There. So, just to show you, all the prickly, stickly bits are gone. I could rub my hand all over this thing. I'm not even going to give myself a splinter. That's what I want.